All right. Well, thank you all so much for attending our technical assistance webinar on the NIH Blueprint and BRAIN Initiative program for enhancing neuroscience diversity through undergraduate research education experiences. We affectionately nickname this BP BRAIN Endure. It's a long name. I just have a few logistics. I know you've done many webinars and I'm sure been on many Zooms, but you can enable captions and live transcript at the bottom of your screen. We do have a Q&A box, so you are welcome to type any questions throughout the webinar in the Q&A. If you have any comments, everyone is open to make comments or notes in the chat. That can go to everyone or just the host and panelists. And rest assured that you will get the slides, you'll get the recording, and many, many more resources in email after the webinar. We will provide everything afterwards. It'll all be saved and recorded, and you can share it with your colleagues as well. A brief introduction to the speakers today. You'll hear from Dr. Michelle Jones-London. She's the Chief of the Office of Programs to Enhance Neuroscience Workforce Diversity, the Open Office at NINDS. And you'll also hear from another program director in the Open Office, Dr. Marguerite Matthews. They both help to manage this program. And you'll also have on the call our scientific review officer for this program, Dr. Deanna Adkins. She'll be available to answer any questions during the Q&A. And just a brief outline for the webinar. We'll go over the program vision and purpose, then go into some program requirements and components, as well as the review criteria. And probably most helpful to you all will be avoiding frequent mistakes, especially some shared experience from having this program for several years now. And finally, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. With that, I'd like to pass it off to Dr. Michelle Jones-London.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahimi. And I'll start off by going through the why. This program was created, outlining the purpose, and really telling you a little bit about, we'll touch on a little bit about eligibility. So when it comes to the FOA rationale and purpose, I believe we're all really familiar with the lack of representation of underrepresented groups throughout all of biomedicine and also neuroscience. The rationale and purpose for this particular Endure program is to really help prepare undergraduate students. So the program is targeted to undergraduate students from diverse backgrounds, including those groups underrepresented in biomedical and behavioral sciences, with a specific target for them to enter PhD degree programs in the neurosciences. And the way that we hope to accomplish this overarching goal is to really support educational activities with a primary focus on three things: research experiences, mentoring activities, and courses for skills development. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I also wanted to say this program now has been around for a little bit. We are in our 13th year. And really, I wanted to show the outcomes of what we've seen so far in terms of really doing what we designed the program to do, that is moving people into postgraduate programs, PhDs. Some of the trainees are currently in transition. So, well, not transition, but in post-bac or MS degree programs. Several of the other trainees have gone on to maybe MD or MD PhD. And so excitedly, we actually have a few postdocs from the program. So with this next iteration of the NOFO, the goal is to really keep up the productivity and the signs of really good outcomes that we've seen within using this strategy within the Endure program. So while in the introduction, you heard that we are all from NINDS, but this program is not limited to the mission areas of NINDS. This is really a collaborative effort of the NIH Blueprint, which is neuroscience institutes at NIH that all focus on some aspect of neuroscience, coming together and really realizing that the sum is greater than the separate institutes. And excitedly, this iteration of the NOFO also has the BRAIN initiative joining us. So if you have preceptors, research areas within any of the ICs that you see on the right-hand slide, part of the slide, then that is a consideration for this program. And also keep in mind brain initiative areas, which go across several ICs. So as you're thinking about, who are the trainees, who are the mentors, keep that in mind, that unlike some of the general NIGMS programs that you may be familiar with, this one really has a neuroscience focus. And we really are hoping that by enhancing a pathway of neuroscience, it'll benefit all of these neuroscience ICs. And then at the bottom of this slide, I'm just highlighting that if the Endure isn't a fit, because the Endure will not be a fit for everyone, we certainly have at NINDS and also at NIH as a whole, a really solid and really a really good amount of R25s to also increase or achieve these goals of research enhancement for underrepresented groups. So with respect to the Endure, this slide is very important. These are the participating components of the collaborative research education partnerships. And these aren't suggestions. Your program really must include these three things. The first thing is that one or more of the institutions should either have a historical and current mission to educate students from any of the populations that have been identified as underrepresented in biomedical research and specifically neuroscience. And these are examples of those groups, or have a documented track record of recruiting, training, or educating using those definitions above, which has resulted in increasing the institution's contribution to the national pool of graduates from underrepresented backgrounds. You would talk about that in the application, how you're fulfilling either A or B. The second part of this, in terms of these participating components or collaborative partnerships, is having a research-intensive institution. This could be defined as having an existing neuroscience or neuroscience-related program and a significant number of potential mentors with NIH R01s, or importantly, other equivalent extramural research support. You could imagine big grants like DoD, HHMI, that would equally provide the research infrastructure to provide those experience to the trainees. And third, there need to be formal alliances with one or more institutions with neuroscience-focused graduate research training programs. And this really is to, from the very beginning, present those relationships, those networks, and that familiarity with the final goal of having these trainees go into neuroscience PhD programs. And this slide really gives you a nice visual of the next Endure program components. Keeping in mind, we do see a great deal of heterogeneity in terms of how people interpret these requirements, but things that are standard with all Endure programs is that there's a school year experience and then there's a summer experience. So these are year-round activities for these Endure trainees, unlike some of our other R25s, such as our summer R25 programs, which is obviously by the title, just the summer. So over the 2 years, Endure students should experience year-round authentic neuroscience research, part-time during the school year, full-time during the summer, develop technical research and professional skills, receive, of course, really outstanding mentorship. It has to be really built into the program, network with graduate programs, and form a diverse and vibrant neuroscience community, not only within the training program that you would propose, but also through activities that we at the NIH coordinate to have this really be a networked and engaged community. In terms of other required program components, we already talked about the research experiences, part-time, authentic, really, that's the key word here, authentic neuroscience research experiences and extramurally funded laboratories during the academic year. Of course, these won't necessarily be full-time, they'll be part-time, and you'll have to work with the undergraduate rules or degree components. Also full-time during the summer research, and this is neuroscience focused graduate programs. In terms of the mentoring activities, the examples that we give are providing students with mentoring and education in critical skills, such as leadership, if appropriate, manuscript writing, also time management, and then modules for the faculty to really learn how to advise and mentor students, especially with a culturally aware lens to the mentorship. With regards to courses for skills development, courses should be integrated across the partnering institutions. Approaches may include, but are not limited to, core neuroscience coursework. It could be statistics, other techniques, really a focus on rigor and quantitative analysis, and seminars emphasizing scientific reading comprehension, writing, and oral presentation skills. And then also research career seminars. With regards to the research education program plan, these programs really can complement ongoing research and education programs occurring at the applicant institution. But those proposed educational experience must be distinct from the training and education programs currently receiving federal support. And what this means in lay terms is that we don't like redundancy and we can't fund overlap, but we do appreciate synergy. So you don't need to feel like you need to hide that level of synergy within the program. The program is also not intended to support long-term training, for NRSA eligible individuals, and it cannot replace some of these other NRSA mechanisms like a T35. So proposed program interventions should really also focus on asset models and leadership opportunities rather than solely focusing on deficit models and remediation. That is something we hold true for all of the institutional programs that we support. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Jones-London. I'm putting a link to the NOFO in the chat, so you may want to pull that up if you haven't already, as a way to know kind of some of the things that we'll be going over, and if you would like more in-depth information. So the first thing I'd like to discuss is the budget for this particular R25. The allowable costs are between $300,000 and $400,000 in direct costs over 5 years. And so there are three main categories in which we consider allowable costs. In terms of personnel costs, the PD and PI, or a combination of multiple PDs and PIs, are allowed to ask for salary support, but that is limited to 3.6 person months. Any individuals designing, directing, or implementing the research education program may request salary and fringe benefits, and it must be appropriate with the person months that is devoted to the program. Salary is for participating undergraduate students, so NIH will provide the salary and fringe benefits consistent with institutional policies. The institutional rates cannot exceed the hourly minimum wage, but if there's a need for that, it has to be justified within the application itself. It's important to note that an R25, especially one such as this, is not meant to substitute an NRSA institutional training program such as the T32. So it is not allowable to have full-time salary support for 40 hours a week continuously for a 12-month period. And that should not be something that you could even do given your the structure of this, and this being for undergraduate students. In the last row is other allowable costs. So again, this cost, there is salary support for the sophomores, sophomore, junior, and senior level undergraduates, but any students paid on this grant must have an employee-employer relationship between the students and the institution. So if your university has not yet had a program like this or have had to negotiate that, now would be the time to start thinking about how to make sure that relationship is in place. The NIH Blueprint and Brain Initiative Institutes will convene an annual meeting that brings together all of the program directors and participating students. So this must be written into the grant. So for instance, historically, we have hosted the annual meeting at the Society for Neuroscience meeting, which many of you already regularly attend. And that typically happens on the Saturday at the beginning of the annual meeting. But the expectation is that all programs, their directors, and their students are in attendance. And lastly, an allowable cost is for consultants, equipment, supplies, travel for key persons, and other program-related expenses. Costs that we do not permit is tuition for the undergraduates, housing or food during the academic year. So obviously this will change during the summer months, but that is something to keep in mind when putting together your budgets. We don't allow for foreign travel or recruitment expenses. We don't allow support for students who have not matriculated at one of the partnering institutions. Costs for textbooks, any sort of incentives such as laptops, memberships to scientific societies, or subscription or internet services or journals. We do not permit support for faculty research or the purchase of any research equipment, and a summer standalone program for students not matriculated as a full-time student at one of the applicant institutions is not allowed. And again, if these are costs that you're looking to have covered, this may be something you will want to revisit before putting in your application. I go too far back. Okay, sorry, this seems to be a delay of the slides on my side. My apologies. So for institutional eligibility, these are the institutions allowed are non-domestic entities, or not allowed, excuse me, non-domestic entities or foreign institutions, or any components of non-domestic components of any U.S. organizations. Scientific societies and small businesses are eligible to apply for under this funding announcement, and any appropriate institutional commitment to the program includes the provision of adequate staff, facilities, and educational resources that can contribute to the planned program. And I think Dr. Jones-London has already sort of iterated the purpose of this and why it's important to make sure that their commitment from these different entities are included in the application. We will only allow for one application per institute. So if you know of other perhaps departments or centers at your university who may be considering putting in an application, again, now is the time to think about combining strategies and approaches and thinking about putting in one application, or perhaps deciding whether or not the fit is really good for the indoor, and perhaps maybe another R25 is more suitable to one of those programs. So for principal investigator eligibility, you must be able to provide both administrative and scientific leadership to the development and implementation of the proposed program. At least one of the PDs or PIs should be an investigator with an active research program in the biomedical sciences. Any additional PDs and PIs, including those with experience in science education or the science of education, any relevant social science disciplines, program evaluation, mentoring, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility initiatives are also welcome to be part of the leadership team. Early stage investigators are eligible to serve as PDPIs as long as doing so will not detract them from their research program and career advancement. And we also implore any of you on the call who are more established investigators, be mindful of the junior colleagues that you may be inviting to be part of this program. Multiple PDPIs are encouraged, particularly when each brings an institutional type perspective and skill set to the research education program. So if you're thinking about your partners, including them in the leadership structure. MPIs should have complementary and integrative expertise and must have a leadership plan as outlined in the application. Effort must be appropriate. Salary support for the PDPI or combination of MPIs is limited to 3.6 person months, as noted in a couple slides before. And funding from the IC is not required. So you don't have to have NIH Blueprint or Brain Initiative Institute support in order to be eligible to serve as a PD. So program faculty that you're thinking of including in this program. Mentors should have research expertise and experience relevant to the proposed program. Mentors must be committed to continue their involvement throughout the total period of the mentee's participation in the award. These faculty should demonstrate a history of or potential for their intended roles as mentors. Faculty should come from a wide range of neuroscience areas relevant to the NIH Blueprint and NIH Brain Initiative missions. Researchers from diverse backgrounds, including those of racial and ethnic minorities, persons with disabilities, and women are highly encouraged to participate as program faculty. I would also like to note that any participating program faculty bio sketches must be included in the application. The personal statement of the bio sketch should describe the program faculty's commitment to scientific rigor, training, mentoring, as well as promoting diverse, inclusive, safe, and supportive scientific environments. For participant eligibility, you should select participants that are expected to participate and help achieve the overall goals of the program. And so not just students that you want to support in a summer research experience, but those who will benefit from the entire structure and format of this program. NIH encourages institutions to recruit prospective participants from groups identified as being underrepresented in the biomedical sciences. I believe Dr. Jones-London has already gone through those groups, but you can see that in the notice of NIH's interest in diversity. Undergraduate students from engineering, mathematics, computer science, physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, nursing, and other relevant science programs who have an interest in the neuroscience would be considered appropriate participants. And again, please remember that in order for these participants to be eligible to receive salary and wages from this grant must be US citizens, non-citizen nationals, or permanent residents, and must be full-time matriculated students that can be sophomores, juniors, or seniors in a baccalaureate degree program at one of the partnering institutions. For participants, it's important to also keep in mind that applications must describe the intended participants and the specific educational background and characteristics that are essential for the participation in this proposed research education program. So you have a specific goal, you have outcomes that you're working towards, and it's important to ensure reviewers in the application that you have thought about a specific set of students that you would like to target and provide opportunities for. So the intended audience should match what you say you're going to do with the program. So you must include a description, including number and percent of the potential applicant pool from the partnering institutions based on the selection criteria established for the program. Describe the selection process and criteria, and also describe any retention strategies and follow-up activities across the partnering institutions to ensure students remain engaged and they're receiving the highest quality mentorship and guidance that they can. In terms of institutional environment and commitment, you must have a letter of institutional commitment. The application must include description of specific support, financial or otherwise, to be provided to the program. Appropriate institutional commitment should also include the provision of adequate staff, facilities, and educational resources. And these can also be used to supplement the allowable costs. So if you're getting in-kind support from the institution, that should be noted in the application. Plans must also include how early communication and interaction between the undergraduate participants and the graduate neuroscience program will enhance graduate school success or school acceptance, and take advantage of the educational how participants will take advantage of the educational environment. Collaboration and buy-in from all programs, departments, and institutions involved. Again, it doesn't have to be every single neuroscience related entity at your university, but the specific entities that will be a formal part of your program. And all collaborative arrangements must be clearly described. And I won't go into too much detail because this information is provided in the notice of funding opportunity. For the advisory committee, you should plan to provide the appointment of an advisory committee to monitor the progress of the research education program and outline the composition of said committee, the roles, the responsibilities, and desired expertise of those involved, the frequency of committee meetings, and any other relevant information about how the advisory committee will be incorporated into the program. You must describe how the advisory committee will evaluate the overall effectiveness of the program, and all renewal applications with advisory committees should include the names of all committee members during the past project period. And certainly for those renewals, also describe any new or transitioning committee members in the application. The recruitment plan to enhance diversity. All new applications must include explicit plans to enhance diversity in recruitment and must include data in support of any past accomplishments. Renewal applications must include a detailed account of experiences in recruiting individuals from underrepresented groups from previous funding periods, and include successful and unsuccessful recruitment strategies and how the proposed plan reflects the program's past experiences. And I'd just like to underscore that we don't expect everything to have gone smoothly. We don't hold you to what you thought might work that didn't work, but you should be learning from your experiences, and we, both program and peer review, need to see where those areas of growth are, areas for improvement, and that will help make a strong renewal application. For the evaluation plan, benchmarks should be specified, and specific plans and procedures must be described to capture, analyze, and report short and long-term outcome measures that would determine the success. You must specify baseline metrics and measures of short and long-term successes. Applicants are encouraged to obtain feedback from participants. For the dissemination plan, a specific plan must be provided to disseminate nationally any findings resulting from or materials developed under the auspices of this program. Sharing course curricula and related materials via web postings, presentations, at scientific meetings and workshops would be included in that. Publication of the program's findings and outcomes in peer-reviewed journals is highly encouraged, and we, as program of this program, would love to help work with you in the event that that happens and maybe you're not sure where to start. But we've had other successes with other programs publishing their findings, and you certainly have a history of programs to work with in highlighting the great work that you're doing. So all of my renewal folks out there, the committee will consider the progress made in the last funding period and the success of the programs in achieving its goals. So it's important for you to tell us in the application those successes and not rely on what we have passively learned by interacting with you over this last funding period. Has the research education program successfully achieved its stated goals and objectives? Has the program had strong impact on student success? And where appropriate, provided value to the participating institutions? You should summarize all program outcomes, and that includes the number of participants who matriculated into and completed the Endure program, also those who've matriculated into doctoral programs, and that does include those going into clinical medical degrees. You must also describe what has been learned through program assessment and any changes made in the program because of that assessment. That's a really important piece. You have been working with these programs for the last several years, and so you've seen how you've had to change, pivot, especially in the wake of a global pandemic. So we recognize those provide new challenges, but it's also important to be able to communicate how you've been able to adjust and adapt to a changing world. So I will now turn it back over to Dr. Jones-London to discuss the review criteria.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Matthews. And something that we always say at the NIH when it comes to these NOFOs, formerly known as FOAs, is that there's really no secret in terms of how you'll be judged or how your program will be assessed. It's all in the review criteria section. And so now I'll just kind of quickly go over the review criteria for this particular program. So first, we're going to have significance. The questions that we're asking here is, does the program address a key audience and an important aspect or important need in research education? Are your interventions, your strategy, actually something that matters in terms of improving the success of increasing representation of diversity in the workforce? Is there convincing evidence in the application that the proposed program will significantly advance the stated goal? Have you proven that you have what is needed in terms of the ingredients within your particular institution, partnership, environment? And then will the proposed Endure program significantly improve the institutional baseline number of students from the partner institutions that enter high quality, competitive graduate programs in neuroscience? The other thing that you'll be judged for is the investigators. Are the PIs capable of providing administrative and scientific leadership to development and implementation of the proposed program? And as Dr. Matthews alluded to, for many of these programs, it's not going to be API or APD. For a program of this size and with the complexity, most likely for the strongest programs going to see a multi-PI plan. So, you know, someone could be very strong in the administrative aspect, somebody could be strong in the scientific leader aspect, but it really is up to you to design that configuration, which will show the reviewers that you have all of these levels of expertise present in your leadership. Is there evidence that an appropriate level of effort will be devoted by the program leadership to ensure the program's intended goal is accomplished? If applicable, is there evidence that the participating faculty have experience in mentoring students and teaching? That is something that people will want to see. And are the faculty good role models for the participants by nature of their scientific accomplishments? If the project is collaborative or multi-PD-PI, do the investigators have complementary and integrated expertise? And I've already really touched on that. In terms of innovation, and this is the one that I say for all of our R25s people struggle with in terms of what makes good mentorship and solid training innovative. So here we say, taking into consideration the nature of the proposed research education program, does the applicant make a strong case for this program effectively reaching an audience in need of the program's offering? That in itself can be innovative, especially in environments where there is not something like this, where you have a critical mass of students, but not an opportunity to help them go to that PhD in neuroscience. Where appropriate, is the proposed program developing or utilizing innovative approaches and the latest practices to improve the knowledge and our skills of the intended audience? There certainly is a much larger literature in terms of not only the science of diversity, but the science of what it takes to communicate research, teaching, and courses to undergraduates. So making sure that you're up on the latest literature and incorporating that into the design will be an important aspect. The other review criteria is going to be the approach, and this is where reviewers tend to focus and can either elevate or sink applications. For the approach, we're asking the question, does the proposed program clearly state its goals and objectives, including the educational level of the audience to be reached? Are you targeting juniors and seniors? That may take a different design. Are you starting earlier and only focusing on sophomores and juniors? Why? And how do you, and come back to explicitly stating what the outcome should be, right? For each activity that you're proposing, and how you're going to evaluate that, and how you're going to look back on what trainees said at the beginning of the program versus what they say at the end of the program. Is there evidence that the program is based on a sound rationale? We've already really talked about that, making sure that it's based on educational concepts and principles. You will have to communicate that. It really doesn't fly to just say, oh, well, we've always done this way and we've had good success. The reviewers will want to hear why you're doing what you're proposing to do, and what is the evidence that this will actually lead to the desired outcomes. Is the plan for evaluation sound and likely to provide information on the effectiveness to the program? Once again, that why piece. Are the planned recruitment, retention, and follow-up activities adequate to ensure a highly qualified participant pool? And that, when it comes to highly qualified, please understand that this is just not about GPAs or creaming off the top, but qualified to do what we hope this to do, and that is providing exposure to trainees who have a desire to pursue this future career path. And we know that several of the metrics that we use historically can filter out talent. So making sure that you're really looking at what it means to have somebody highly qualified to be in the participant pool. And then, does the proposed research experience and courses and the skills development meet the needs of the participating students, right? Have you built something that actually addresses what the needs are if you're looking at a gap analysis for this stage of a career and for the trainees that will participate? And also, does it include, once again, to go back to the goals of the program, does it include a space for these underrepresented groups and design to support their competitiveness for the completion of a PhD degree in the future? Does the program demonstrate that participants will have authentic, meaningful research experience in neuroscience-related laboratories? The one thing we know about the data that we see in terms of who gets into graduate school, the one thing that is really consistent is prior research experience. And that means that having real research experience at that undergraduate level is going to help us get to that final or overarching goal. With regards to the environment, and remember, there's going to be several environments because we're talking about a program that incorporates collaborations and partnerships. Will the scientific and educational environment of the proposed program contribute to the goals? Is there a plan to take advantage of this environment to enhance the educational value of the program? Is there tangible evidence of institutional commitment? Our hope is that none of these programs will sit on an island, but that they're truly integrated into the culture and the climate of the entire institution with respect to support and inclusion for DEIA. Is there evidence that the faculty have sufficient institutional support to create an environment? It's best if PIs aren't working against forces to implement these types of programs, but instead are being supported and actually having additive value in an environment that wants to see these goals. Where appropriate, is it evidence of collaboration and buy-in among participating programs, departments, and institutions that sort of just reinforces that whole environment? And how well and in what ways does the program interact with on and off-site neuroscience training programs? So for these partnerships, mainly probably in the summer, is it just, the trainees go off and good luck to you? Or are the conversations and the partnerships really real, where there are conversations during the academic year with the summer programs that the students will go to, in terms of when they're receiving an on-door trainee, everybody has bought into the vision and the long-term goal for each and every trainee? Is there evidence of commitment and integration with the T32 program beyond summer research exposure? For really successful programs that we've had, there's even been faculty bi-directional learning, where the T32 spends some time at the undergraduate institution, maybe giving seminars and talks, and the undergraduate PIs go to the T32 institution to share that same knowledge. Even interactions in terms of teaching the undergraduate program during the academic year. So really true, what we like to see is really inclusive environments where there is connection, collaboration. The additional review considerations, Dr. Matthews has gone over the evaluation plan. This is really important. Reviewers really look critically at this, especially in the DEI diversity space in terms of programs. The goal here is to really learn from the investments and to spend more time doing things that make a difference and less time doing things that don't. And the only way we know that is if the evaluation plans are strong. So the reviewers will ask the question, are the evaluation plan and timeline adequate for assessing the effectiveness and process and outcome of the program? Are the plans for obtaining feedback from the participants adequate? That's the other thing that we see with successful programs, is that they don't wait to the end of the program. They realize that many of these strategies, interventions you may design, and then the participants may give you feedback that this is just not calibrated to either the right level, or this isn't doing what you thought it was doing. So building that iterative feedback is really important. Dissemination plans are also something we want to share as a community. We want to learn from each other. We've talked about the recruitment plan to enhance diversity. And then the part that we didn't mention is that when it comes to research, it comes to training, we want there to be a solid training in the responsible conduct of research. And then this is me again, avoiding frequent mistakes. And as I said, the program is 13 years old. We, as you probably have learned from many programs that you have done, we have learned over time where there are sort of little potholes in terms of things. The first thing that I would ask for, we can't require this, but it really is helpful to us. And Dr. Atkins, who's our scientific review officer, will be very appreciative of this as we design and compose the review panel, is that if you put in a letter of intent, there you will describe the title of the proposed activity, give us, it says telephone numbers, that's pretty antiquated. I don't think you need to include that. But the names of those involved, the key personnel, participating institution, and cite the number and title of this funding opportunity. It also is good for us because we can see perhaps some things that maybe people don't read the NOFO carefully, and we've caught and saved people some time in terms of if there's a misunderstanding about the program. But we can only do that if we know you're coming in. So the letter of intent is helpful. The other tips that we would say is really pay attention to allowable appendix materials. Currently, as I said, these applications will be reviewed at NINDS within our scientific review branch, but all applications come in through CSR. They are really harsh about something that they call overstuffing applications. There is nothing we can do to save your application if you run afoul of that. You could cry to Dr. Matthews and I, and our hearts will go out to you because we know this is a lot of time, but there is nothing we can do to save your application. So please pay attention to allowable appendix materials. In the NOFO, we list out what is allowable because we have asked you to provide a great amount of information that won't fit in the normal page allotment for just the R25 mechanism, but it has to be what we have been cleared to accept. And that will be in the NOFO, and it'll be under the appendix materials. Pay careful attention to that. The other thing is to submit early. These are only one receipt dates per year. We have 2 times. The next one coming up February 2024, and the next one February 2025. But it's one receipt date. So if you miss it this time, you'll wait another year. So we know that sometimes, just as we said, things are out of our control, some things are out of your control. You don't actually physically submit an application. Your sponsored grants office does. So submitting early, making sure all of your materials show up the way you gave it to them, and double checking that is really important. Some of these applications can get pretty big, and by the time they're submitted, very sadly, the reviewers sometimes don't see the version that you may have intended them to receive, and we can't review what isn't there. So make sure that you submit early, and know that funding, if awarded, would likely start in December. So planning for that and sort of getting that strategy together if you do end up receiving the award. It's good to have that timeline in mind. The other thing I will say is we told you a lot of what is required and what makes an Endure program an Endure program, but realize that you do have the bandwidth and the freedom and the innovation to make a program that fits your environment and your special set of strengths, the special student population that you have around you. So not one size will fit all. We have clear program goals and milestones and a plan to achieve those goals, but it really is a holistic approach, taking advantage of the institutional strengths and the community attributes that you have around you. Innovation is a bonus. Effectiveness is what really is the most important. And we really do want to see a lens of recruitment of diversity within diversity. And that makes sure making sure that we also have an eye and a lens with persons with disabilities, disadvantaged groups as well. And screening genuine interest in, I should say, PhD, MD, or PhD career track. We know that in the past, several programs have found it hard because sometimes people wanting to go into medical school, are looking for research experiences as well. Certainly, we're not overflowing with diverse representation in the MD career sector either. But as I said, the Endure can't be all things to all people. With the investment by NIH Blueprint and the BRAIN Initiative, we really are focused on solving that problem for representation within the research track. There has to be a balancing schedule of professional development activities during the academic year for undergraduates. We know that. You can't think about a PhD in neuroscience if you aren't able to successfully get the BS or the BA. So realizing that reviewers will appreciate that if you take a realistic approach to that. There's a value of networking, creative ideas that we've seen as neuro pizza nights, science retreats, Endure panel discussions, and really all of these individual inputs, but really creating a scientific community, impacting research exposure and factors that affect graduate school admission, such as oral presentations, interviewing skills, neuroscience courses, and scientific writing. And then the specific lessons we've learned for partnerships is really synergy with existing programs. Integration and collaboration are necessary. Leverage the value added. If you have other programs going on, whether they be NSF, NIGMS, leverage those communities, make the whole greater than the sum of the parts. Distant summer research experiences need uniformity. The scholars may be going to different places, but there needs to be some uniformity in terms of what it means to have an Endure student in that summer program. And the mentoring and supervision received by all the trainees really does require careful oversight from the Endure PI. You don't want the summer research experience to be the thing that convinces somebody that they don't belong in neuroscience. That's not the goal of the program. So incorporating those sort of safeguards in your application will make your application much more competitive. There needs to be bilateral education, trainees, and admission committees. So conversations with the T32s that you have in partnerships, it's important to incorporate that into the application. How will you do that? How will this be? It's not only the undergraduate sort of sending students to these institutions, but these institutions that are receiving the trainees, learning what it means to train undergraduates from underrepresented backgrounds. And then partners with vested interests and commitments to goals of the program. As I said, not just a brief summer guest. Most of the successful Endure programs that we've had, it really becomes we are all in this together. We all care about these Endure scholars. And with that, I will open it up for questions and turn it back to Dr. Ibrahimi. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for posting your questions in the Q&A and in the chat. Several of them have been answered, so please do look at the Q&A and Dr. Matthews' answers. If you want any further clarification, we're happy to do that now. We have about 5 or 6 minutes, so we have a couple of questions, I think. I will stop sharing the screen, but again, all the slides, these emails will be shared with you post event. All right, so with that, I think we just had a couple other questions, maybe for further clarification. So one of our attendees asked about examples of strong and effective evaluation rubrics for these types of programs. Would one of you like to address that?
Sure, I'm happy to address that. There are a number of evaluation tools for research programs and mentoring relationships that are available on the web. I will name 2 that I think are great resources to look into. The CIMER project, spelled C-I-M-E-R. I'm putting the link in the chat there. This is a group many of you may know, Christine Fund, who works out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They provide evaluation services, but also have a database for evaluation tools. And so you may want to look into that. Also, there is a group called Understanding Interventions that has a journal, and they publish a lot on both interventions, but other evaluation tools, specifically as it relates to broadening participation in STEM. So thinking about these underrepresented groups, there are very intentional ways of being able to decipher programming that fits the needs of those populations of students. So I certainly encourage you to look into that. And Dr. Jones-London also posted the Diversity Program Consortium group, aka DPC, that's started with the Common Fund and is now been overseen by the National Institute of General Medical Sciences for a lot of these tools. But I would implore you again that not all evaluation tools are one size fits all. Think about the review criteria and what we're asking you to report on in terms of outcomes, and then make sure you find an evaluation tool that allows you to get that information, and then certainly you can expand it to get other information that may be suitable to your program or to your institution.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matthews. We have a question in the chat that's probably one of our most frequently asked questions about, clarifying what is meant by a formal alliance and showing and demonstrating real partnerships within your application. Dr. Jones?
I think, and we touched on a little bit of that, is really incorporating them into your leadership of the program, key personnel, perhaps even multiple PI. What really turns reviewers off is if you name partnerships, but either there is no letter of support, or the letter of support from that said institution or partner is really lukewarm or reads as generic. Also, if you're talking about some of the partnerships with MSIs, minority surveyed institutions, or HBCUs or Hispanic survey institutions, sort of name dropping these institutions, but once again, not showing any formal relationship with researchers or PIs at that institutions, or real detailed letters of support, that doesn't read as formal partnerships nor collaborations.
I'd like to add one thing to that. So especially if you do have a multi-PI situation, and especially if you're the Research One institution reaching out to some of the historically disadvantaged colleges, not only should you have that really strong letter showing that there's a true partnership, but also if, for example, one of the PIs or PDs happens to be more junior, that they're going to be protected, that their promotion and tenure or their advancement is not going to be injured by taking on a lot of new responsibilities. And so a lot of our reviewers really pay attention to protecting not only the students who are the focus of the program, but also the faculty members involved. And if one brings in, for instance, peer-to-peer mentors at some of the universities, that they're also protected as well. So just make sure that's incorporated into your plans as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atkins, for that additional information. We're coming up on the hour, so thank you all so much for attending live. Again, the recording, the resources, and many more links will be shared with you after the event. If you have any further questions or want any further clarification, please do reach out to us. Again, we'll share those emails. But thank you for your time today, and we look forward to seeing your application. Bye.
Thank you. Please reach out.